Hi guys, so here's an interesting question. Who is responsible for Brexit? Is it Nigel Farage or is it Boris Johnson? Because Nigel seems to think that he's the one who delivered it for Boris Johnson. Farage, as part of his new segment on GB News, answered a question about whether he would accept a peerage. What a wonderful thought. Anyway, Farage laughed it off, suggesting that Brexit wouldn't have happened for Boris Johnson if Nigel hadn't first raised the issue of leaving the European Union many years before the referendum. So let's hear what Nigel had to say about this.
If Boris offered you a peerage tomorrow, would you accept it? Boris won't offer me a peerage. He can't do that. Of course he can't do that. He owes me so much, he could never, ever admit it in public. So, I mean, frankly, that just isn't going to happen. And as Peter Hitchens said, I did do Boris quite a big favour, even by raising Brexit as an issue, because Boris would never have done it on his own.
Now, technically, Boris Johnson can offer him a peerage. There isn't a technical problem here. But Farage, of course, is suggesting that if he did, it would mean that Nigel Farage owes Boris, or Boris Johnson owes Nigel Farage something. Now, I want to go back in time here to try and answer this question. Who is responsible for Brexit? Is it Boris Johnson or is it Nigel Farage? Now, Nigel Farage has always been banging on about leaving the European Union since the 1990s. Now, when he became a member of the European Parliament back in, I think it was 2000 or 2002, he, of course, was adamant we need to leave the European Union. And while his power in Britain was very little, he was considered a fringe figure, he was a powerful voice in Europe. Many Eurosceptic parties around Europe flocked to him, wanted to listen to what he had to say, tried to emulate his success in a sense. And but I have to be honest about this. He comes across as a charismatic figure, and many people seem to like him. He's able to say the right things. But in Britain, he never really got any traction. UKIP never really had any success, and he even he ran for public office a number of times and failed. So he remained a fringe figure. But in the Conservative Party, they had their own Eurosceptics, and they were constantly banging on about leaving the European Union. And eventually they got to the point where they were able to pressure David Cameron into holding a referendum. Now, of course, Cameron held it in order to keep these people quiet. He gambled, and of course, history has proven that he lost. Now, of course, Cameron, that was the end of Cameron, basically, and Theresa May took over. And Theresa May had to pick up the pieces of Brexit. A disaster, and she had to pick up the pieces. She actually campaigned to remain in the European Union. She's a Remainer, of course, after she claimed to be a Brexiteer. But she found herself trying to put the pieces together. She failed, of course, and we had Boris Johnson. Now, Johnson, of course, profited from that disaster, the disaster May had inherited, and said, look, I'm going to make my own type of Brexit. So Farage then, realizing that Johnson was profiting from the situation, attempted to dominate and steal the limelight by saying, I'm going to run against Boris Johnson in 2019. The Brexit Party, following a success in Europe, are going to field candidates in the general election in 2019. And we're going to force Boris Johnson by mandate, we're going to force him to respect the vote. And if necessary, we'll have a clean break Brexit or no deal Brexit. Now, of course, Farage understood that things were not going his way, and he decided, actually, we're not going to field so many candidates against the Tories, and we're going to help the Tories. Now, he's presenting it as helping the Tories. Perhaps he realized we don't have a hope here. We're just cutting off our own legs by fielding candidates everywhere. So, of course, Boris Johnson claims victory following that, and Farage returns to being a fringe figure once again. So, who delivered Brexit? Who was responsible for Brexit? I still lay the blame at Boris Johnson's door, because Boris Johnson knew he could use it as a tool. to remain in office. He knew he could rally people to vote for him using this as a tool. Farage started the ball rolling, but Farage became a fringe figure pretty quickly. Boris Johnson took over, and I would have to say that Boris Johnson is the one responsible for Brexit. Of course, Nigel Farage has his part to play, but at the end of the day, Boris Johnson is the one who signed the agreements. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. Who do you think is actually responsible for Brexit? Is it Farage or is it Boris Johnson? As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot. I want to say a big thank you to all of my patrons. You ensure that this channel continues to exist. I'm eternally grateful for all of your support. If you join Patreon, you will receive instant access to our Discord server, where we have both audio and video chats. You can chat with me and other patrons, where we discuss important and non-important issues. Becoming a patron per month costs about the same as a large coffee, so why not check it out?